back down. I want it now and I ain't never gon' back down. I gotta go for the gold. I need to switch up the mode. I'm gonna win on my own. I'm in a whole nother zone. I reached the pinnacle. I don't have time, this is critical. It's time to finish you. I don't care who I just did it to. I gotta go for the gold. I need to switch up the mode. I'm gonna win on my own. I'm in a whole nother zone. I reached the pinnacle. I don't have time, this is critical. It's time to finish you. I don't care who I just did it to. I want it now, I gotta rise up, rise up. I want it now, I gotta rise up, rise up. I want it now, I gotta rise up, rise up. I want it now, I gotta rise up, rise up. I want it now, I gotta rise up, rise up. I want it now, I gotta rise up, rise up. I want it now, I gotta rise up, rise up. I want it now, I gotta. I want it now and I ain't never gon' back down. I want it now and I ain't never gon' back down. I want it now and I ain't never gon' back down. I want it now and I ain't never gon' back down. Said I'm fired up. I'm sorry your time's up. I see the top and I climb up. Came from the ashes, I rise up. Rise up, rise up. I want it now, I gotta rise up. Rise up, I want it now, I gotta rise up. Rise up, I want it now, I gotta rise up. Rise up, I want it now, I gotta rise up.
You can't stop me now. 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 You can't stop me now.
Live tonight from the virtual Las Vegas Motor Speedway, we say good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to the round of 12 as RaceSpot TV's coverage of the 2020 Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series powered by Boosted continues. As always, on a Monday night, we're happy that you're with us on RaceSpot TV and the iRacing Esports Network. We're alongside our producer downstairs, Hugo Luis and Justin Prince. My name is Evan Pisoko, and Justin, we just got rid of our first set of eliminations. What was once the round of 16, now down to 12. A points reset, and now another set of 3 races beginning tonight from America's Racing Showplace.
Yes, this is going to be a difficult race. It was a difficult round of 16 where we've seen multiple different drivers face attrition. But tonight, it's going back to the mile-and-a-half circus. This is probably the easiest race of this entire round because not only do you have Las Vegas, one of the more difficult mile-and-a-half tracks, but Talladega in the Charlotte Roval. It's not an easy round to try and have a hope to get inside the round of 8.
Yeah, a lot of people say that this round is the most difficult. We kind of called the round of 16 the short track round because Richmond and Bristol back-to-back, but you're right, tonight's kind of the only race where you know what you're going to get. You go into Talladega, anybody could win that race, and if you're not a good road racer, you need a lot of points tonight and a lot of points in 1 week's time from Dega because it is not going to be a good night out for you as we make our first ever trip to this updated version of the Charlotte Roval. Of course, we raced there last fall in this series. That was pre-reconfiguration of that racetrack. So here's how the points look coming into this evening. Kyle Kamer, Daniel Scott, Rhett McBride, and Jared Mogard all eliminated following the round of 16. Both Kamer and Scott missed it by just 2 points. So we reset. Everybody goes back to 3,000 points, but race wins in the round of 16 by both Daniel Epperhart and Andrew Friedage up at the top of the board. Means that those drivers with Epperhart and Lariah actually means that they're going to have a 3-point advantage over everybody else. So everybody else then 3,000 points flat. Justin, it's not the big benefit that NASCAR's current point system with the playoff points gives, where some drivers are starting 30, 40, 50 points ahead of the cut line, but those 3 could be big if it comes down to what we saw 2 points play a difference in the cut line last round.
Yeah, that specifically with Daniel Scott and many of the drivers, including those who have those bonus points. Remember, set in post-race, this is the track they want to get the win at to try and make sure they have some breathing room for the other 2 races. You don't win tonight's race or even have any trouble in this race, you're likely going to not have an easy time on trying to make it out of the round. It's going to be one where you're going to approach racing under the lights as well, so you're going to have to adapt to a much changing racetrack as the evening progresses.
And this racetrack has changed a lot over the years. In 2006, it was made much more competitive for stock cars when that major renovation upped the banking from 12 to progressive up to 20 degrees, which makes it one of my favorite tracks intermediate-wise on the NASCAR calendar. Maybe slightly biased by the fact that it's a 30-minute drive down the I-15 for me, but alas, Las Vegas Motor Speedway is a fun race. And we're going to be racing tonight for 125 miles, or 125 laps, so 188 miles start to finish in this race, Justin. And you can see kind of dusk conditions, and it is a sunset race. Depending on how long we race, we could see the lights come on and a bit of night racing, but the way it is now, tough for drivers to see depending on where you are on track with that Nevada sunset ducking away by 1 and 2.
And it's also some of the coolest track conditions seen by competitors the entire week. In official racing, for NIS, they were in the 70s. For A open and A fixed, it was more so in the 80s. So there's going to be a lot more grip than some of these drivers may be expecting with this fixed set. It's one where if you push too hard at the start of a run, Evan, you can kill the right rear tire as well. So it's one where it is more towards the driver's ability to drive the track rather than, say, being planted around the track and just being full throttle, like we may see in some other tracks.
Yeah, and that's kind of what drivers expect coming into this race is at intermediates with this package. You are pretty much full throttle. Some drivers were talking about it being more akin to Daytona than, this track was 2 years ago. Take a look at Michael Moser just wrapping up the qualifying session. They had 5 minutes on the board to get down 2 laps, and there's a little bit under now a minute left for some drivers to get those times in. Many of them have already gotten the time down. but a lot of them as well just running some extra laps. And as they say that, Justin, I want to make an observation on board with the 54. Most races, we're talking about half the field qualifying, half the field not. A lot of drivers like to play it safe. We've got 30 of 34 drivers with the time on the board. That is well above average.
Well, here's the main reason. Talked a bit about how the fixed setup can be at this track, but with this track in general, Evan, it's one where track position is crucial with how this package is this year for this particular day and time and weather condition. It's not easy to cut through the field. You push too hard to get through the field, you're dropping right on back. That was seen in multiple cases, including the Coke race. This is not going to be an easy one if you're, say, in the 20s compared to, say, if you're inside the top 10. If you had a good starting position in qualifying built up, you're in good shape for tonight.
And with that, qualifying has drawn to a close. Let's go trackside and take a look at your RaceSpot TV starting grid. Pole position goes to, you see a front row lockout for the playoff competitors. It's Adam Benefield with a 29.903. He'll bring us to the green flag, joined alongside by Andrew Friedage, winless so far in this postseason. Gary Sexton gonna roll from third. He'll be joined by the 8 of Kyle Kamer in the number 4 spot. We look back to row number 3, Brent McBride and Scott McClendon. Daniel Eberhardt, race winner from Richmond, starts in 7th. Matt Morrow rolls from 8th, with David Washington 9th, and a whole lot of playoff drivers around this part as Eric Stanford rounds out your top 10.
Thomas George just squeaking out of the round after an abysmal final race right alongside Grant Davis in P number 12. Following row sees Kyle Trudell start alongside one of the top drivers from Richmond. Egno Phillip, he came close to victory as well at Bristol before late race mistakes came into play. Ross Cato back in the field today with Sam Nieto in 16th. Then Dan Cruz along with Michael Laraya, Jeremy Miller, and Matt Albertson, who led the field in practice, is in 20th, just a 10th off the pole.
You're not that bad. I mean, we are really tight here through 21st position with Brian Chambliss and Daniel Scott, Joseph Tice, John Rada, and Tremid Valderrama. Your top 25, Michael Kaczynski there, 26th. John Fowler, Michael Mosier, along with Sean Kalist and Tom Morano. 30 cars taking a time in queue. The rest are provisionals. Notably, Dylan Jones. You saw him being the only playoff driver back there ahead of Durham, Soa, and Winfield. Talk more, though, Justin, about Las Vegas Motor Speedway. We've mentioned, of course, 1.5 miles in length, and it is really that 12 to 20 degrees of progressive banking that I mentioned that makes this racetrack so fun as an intermediate. But what you won't see on the stat sheet as the iRacing official pace car rolls off into 1 and 2 is the bumps on the inside of 1 and 2, and even in 3 and 4, but a little bit less so, is going to dictate the lines that these drivers play, and kind of makes you decide how you want to get around this joint.
Hit it right on the head because both ends of the track drive much more differently. Turn 1 and 2, some drivers will take those bumps head on and try and be right next to the white line tonight. Some drivers were able to make that stick in official racing throughout the week, but others will try and either late arc their way around the bumps or just ride the middle line like we've seen in the Coke race work so well because of the momentum you can carry down the backstretch. However, you need to be on the bottom in 3 and 4 for the most part. You can squeeze down from the top for the front stretch, but as a driver, if you don't get clear by this portion of the back straightaway, especially at the start of this race, you're likely going backwards to begin the opening run of the race.
There's no guarantees for the rest of the round of 12. It is a dicey date with Talladega Superspeedway next Monday night, and it'll all round out with a trip to the Charlotte Roval in 2 weeks' time. So if you want points, you want to win to try to get to the next round, tonight may be your best opportunity to roll the dice and get it done. Pace car going to dive to the safety of pit lane. The field is in the hands of Adam Benefield as we say, let's go racing from Las Vegas. This is the round of 12. Good start for the cars to the inside line. Benefield lead advantage into 3 and 4. Friedage not that far off in that pink and black boosted dot club entry. But at the completion of lap number 1, side by side of the apron, here comes Sexton. He chases the 83 of Benefield.
And this bottom line can be a bit of a better line if you are comfortable enough on throttle to try and run at the bottom. But the main difficult part, especially this early on, making sure you don't burn up your tires by pushing too hard and trying to get that top line working to squeezing down, or hitting the bumps too hard to where you end up cooking your right front. It's going to be about finding this balance with these fights like this for the lead.
We can see these cars getting no separation. Kamer second along on the outside, a little bit tight in the pack, but that trip through 1 and 2 looked identical to how they did on the opening lap of this race, and that is because they're staying flat-footed basically all the way around this racetrack for anywhere from 10 to 20 laps, depending on what we're working with track temps and all those kind of other external variables. But off of the get-go, it is Holder wide, 3 wide as the 8 car looks to the outside. That was Sexton way to the bottom again, really trying to dig to the inside, but Benefield would not open a door. He stays in line third for the moment as we are 2 wide through the field.
Part of that reasoning for being so aggressive on the bottom, I think, from Gary Sexton is the importance of being able to control your line in clean air. Just couldn't take it away from Benefield, and now Friedage has a chance to get himself clear and back single file this time.
You're trying, but again, right now it's just so difficult to make moves. Some drivers deep in the field able to make some marks, and I mentioned it as we took a look at the starting grid. The drivers at the top of your screen highlighted in red, but the drivers still fighting for the championship in the round of 12. You can also identify them on the racetrack by those pink splitters, windshield banners, and spoilers to separate themselves from the rest of the cars in the field. We saw a lot of moments in that round of 16 with the non-playoff cars really mix it up with some of the playoff drivers, and much to the dismay of those championship hopefuls, and with the speed in a lot of those non-playoff cars having qualified up front. In fact, there's more of them right now, top 7, than there isn't. Those drivers are going to be right in the thick of things again here tonight.
We talked about Agno Phillip a little bit in his performance of the short tracks, but also don't forget Malik Ray and his dominating performance with Darlington, where he just completely cooked the field, so to speak, in terms of pace with how he was that week. Now, there's still going to be aggression here today because Sexton, we know how close he was. We've talked about McClendon coming close a few times. It's been an up-and-down campaign. He's in the mix of this top-running group. And don't forget about Matthew Mara. He quietly had a decent run at Darlington as well. He's up inside this top 10 pack as well.
On board, right-hand side of your screen, that's Rhett McBride, 7th last time at the start-finish line. You saw it, they're a big sweeping move to the inside. Friedage trying to cut off that apron here at LVMS. It's one of the racetracks where, most of these intermediates drivers can go down there to make some moves, but it is a little bit tighter than some, certainly wider than others, so it's not going to be a move that drivers will make every single time around. But if they are trying to get a little bit extra, look for them to transition to the flat of the racetrack below that white line. Looks like everybody in the lead pack opting not to go for it right now. On restarts as well, that could be an opportunity for somebody trying to force their way to the inside, make an effort in a race that looks like it may prove to be very difficult to pass at. But at least from the start, so far so good. All 34 drivers who started this race on track as we look to put 9 laps behind us.
Similar to what we've seen on Tuesday night with the Coke Series, and similar to what was seen by some of the broadcasts, as Everhart, I don't think, wanted to take a 3, just cost a massive check.
And Steve Durham just said on the radio, I love having Talladega in back-to-back weeks. I mean, that's how it feels. You are just stuck in this massive pack of cars. It's very difficult to go forwards. Unless you're really off pace, it's also pretty difficult to lose a ton. So you do have to scrap.
And they're still wrecking as Sexton got turned in the grass.
It's Trudell and Mara in 4, but you mentioned the grass. That's Gary Sexton, who was involved after the initial bit of contact, and we are under a caution flag. Let's see how it started.
Yeah, it's going to be around the edge of the top 10. And keep an eye on the 98, trying to take a 3, but just a little too quick on the throttle, pushed up in Amara, collecting him in the 7. But as the caution came out, I believe McBride hooked Sexton as they were trying to back it down into the infield.
And that's where, Sexton had nothing to do with that. And it wasn't wreck avoidance. Sexton looks like he got a little bit loose. I don't know if it was from contact. Let's see. You see the bobble from Sexton there, but that might have been the 5 making the 13 move by getting up underneath him. And Justin, I don't think that was as much as they were checking up. I think they were just going to wreck anyways. And if that incident in 3 and 4 hadn't happened, then this would have been the yellow.
Yeah, there is an actual possibility indeed. But now, this makes it a one-stopper to the end, and the reason not everybody's coming down to the pit lane here is these cars can save fuel to make it on track for a green flag pit stop. Everyone else will still have to make that said pit stop, will sacrifice one of their tire sets now. And track position has been so key. We talked about it at the start. On fresher tires, only within just this range, most of the time, most drivers have been stuck in the back much of the race after the tires.
Yeah, the conventional wisdom is get the tires, go through the field, but you saw there, it is difficult to make passes in traffic. The fresh rubber will help, but nothing to guarantee. When the cars are so close together, you almost want a little bit of separation for you to be able to kind of differentiate your line and differentiate yourself from those drivers who you have that advantage over. As it is every Monday night, these drivers have 4 sets of tires available, so 3 additional sets in the pits. In addition to the set in which they start. So those drivers having pitted will have 2 sets of tires left. If they went with 4, the guys up at the front of the field opting not to pit have not exhausted any. So after a bit of a split call, your top 22 cars have stayed on track, which means that Agnell Phillip will be the lead car of that fresh rubber group with about 10 lap fresher tires is when that yellow came out.
Now here's the little benefit. It was mentioned what was said on the radio with Durham feeling it's back-to-back with Talladega. It can be like that for about the first 15 laps, Evan, with a much cooler track up to words of even 25 laps. But then the tire wear has usually kicked on in, and that's where the packs usually break up, like we've seen in the Coke race before. Well, tire sets caused partly the calamity that happened the second half of that race. So strategy could be key tonight, as well as fuel saving tonight, with the most the drivers are able to make 62 laps with clutch and coasting.
In that race, you talk about the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series race last Tuesday. The first half of it, totally different than the second half. That was a race that had gone green to a cycle of pit stops, and then the yellows combined with those tire limits really made things totally different and kind of chaotic in the second half of it. Whereas if we drop down and, look at this race, it's going to be very, very different in terms of, right now we're getting the yellows early. If you get a green flag run late, could it benefit? Will it hurt the drivers that are opting to come down to pit road now? Those are the things which you kind of want to be able to predict, Justin. You can kind of take an estimated guess, but there's certainly no way to know for certain. So we're going to put the lights back on top of the pace car, make one more trip around. We'll see how this race complexion is. It'll be 111 laps to go next time by. A long way, but this is not a marathon of a race.
No, it's not just as simple as planning things out for the long haul. You can have these little bursts of sprints with what we've seen and what has happened in some races. However, you need to be prepared if you get kind of sort of that half marathon, so to speak, that full green flag run that comes into play, then the potential of either a caution or a run to the end of the race. So how you do both short run, mid run, long run in your preparation as a result of that in official racing in various different tests is going to become very crucial by the end of the night.
Looks like a lot of, you see the sunset there in the background at turn number 2. Almost looks like some of the dust storms that we've seen here in the valley, or some of the smoke as well from California wildfires that have kind of kept the skies over Vegas very hazy over the last 2-3 weeks or so. But getting later into the evening, the lights are going to be coming on soon. It's just past about 7:15 p.m. in the sim. So this race may get to those cooler conditions as it wears on. Let's try it again. The pace car down it in this time, and quietly Andrew Friedrich to the race lead. Gonna be in control as we're back underway.
And there's some teamwork counting in 2 friends, getting the count to just pulling away. You can tell which friend didn't get the count of the 90 machine stuck behind Benefield on the launch.
Yeah, just was not in sync with those drivers, and that's why your top 4, now 5 maybe, single file out as it's the 90 to Stanford on the inside behind, but here we go for the race lead. Cameron to the inside on the 88 of Friedrich. He's going to get a nose in front, but the 88 will benefit from the run off of that banking. Drag race to the line. Kamer the advantage as Daniel Eberhardt makes up a ton of time with that cut down to the apron. Now the 8 car tight in the center, and it looks like now the 88 of Friedrich going to go back to the race lead.
I'd want Kamer for trying to take that look in turn 3, but the downside is if you don't complete the pass, you get pitched right on down. That's what Bennett is doing now with his experience at the pro level, and now everyone just freight train as Kamer's going to have to lift coming off the corner to make sure he doesn't plow in. Here comes the battle for the lead again.
So back down to the inside, at Benefield on Friedrich. They fight for second as well. Cameron to the inside, Eberhardt to the outside of that duo. More side by side, McBride and Stanford even behind them. But you see, it doesn't matter how good Benefield is into the quarter. Certainly 1 and 2, a more realistic option for cars on the bottom down here at 3 and 4. Here he's only able to get right alongside him. At the other end of the racetrack, that inside car can get a half a car length up, even maybe a full car length up. But Friedrich, by staying in the gas and working the banking, pulls better. Look at this. Benefit to the 83 of Benefield, but watch how different they are in speed down the back.
And that's just because of the momentum and the ability to ramp off the banking, so to speak, that carries you forward down that stretch. Then the bottom line is just the shortest way around, and that's in part why that line is so quick in total. The difference is around here, it's not as much of a banking difference. Down the front stretch, what a tandem draft though to go 1 and 2 for Eberhardt and Friedrich.
Yeah, those 2 guys got hooked up, and Benefield actually apologized that he feels like he might have pushed up a little bit on Andrew there, and maybe that contributed to why he was a little bit on the back foot on that front straightaway. So a combination of that and the shove, going to drop the 83 back to 3rd. Daniel Eberhardt, a race high P2. So we talk about the difficulties to make passes, as here's an attempt for 4th. Stanford to the inside of Kamer behind that lead trio. Very, very short-lived as he tucks back in line, but it goes to show some drivers can make moves. Eberhardt +5, so is Stanford. In a battle of his own, as here comes the 90 for the race lead, JP, and he's got the outside. Real good look here for Eberhardt.
And that's been the best method throughout the week. Get to somebody's outside quarter panel, force them off the preferred line on the outside or middle line, and then keep that momentum around the rest of the track. If you get it timed up right, you can take the lead just like that. And Benefield just saying thank you very much, just taking the second spot back in a similar way that Eberhardt had pushed Friedrich up to the lead and himself into second before.
You can see through the field, even some 3 wide way back there. That's for like 21st or something, but battles throughout the field here. It means that driver's going to be up and working on the wheel throughout this race. There's Eberhardt back down to the apron. You can see that bright yellow number 22 of Scott McClendon. Happy to have him back on track after missing a couple of weeks for the last month or so. He's back in it, started 6th, consistent in that spot. And the battle is 3rd as Kamer went way up against the fence, had to get out of the throttle, and it allowed Stanford to make the pass on the bottom. So they will exchange 4th and 5th.
Yeah, it's been an interesting race so far for Kamer, and we've talked about line preferences in terms of making sure you don't fry the tires. With this fight for the lead, you have to keep wondering if Benefield's just cooking his right front with how aggressive he's trying to be here. He said over the radio that he originally had let the cars go here, that he's fighting with, yet he's still trying to keep it up. Compare that to battles such as around here, where you're just waiting for the right hole and you have to plan it out cordially and smart. It's not just as simple as, I'm going to go full throttle and send it right up to the inside. No, that's a good way to completely fry your tires.
And that was a conversation that I was having with some of the drivers, just kind of talking with them on the pit lane before this race was, they were kind of strategizing over what the best way was to save tires. It's going to be critical if we get the long runs. Right-hand side, back on board with McBride, all over McClendon as he hounds him in a battle for 7th and 8th spot. He'll get down to the inside and try to make that move, and there's the outside camera's left hand. Can't do it, even though he had a peek to the bottom. Listen, that bottom's going to be open basically all night long. Going to be awfully difficult to actually complete that move unless, of course, you either, see that driver up on the outside line make a mistake, or vice versa. I think it's going to take a gutsy move, maybe with a little bit more tire wear when drivers get to that point. But, they were thinking that this is going to be a race where you need to conserve, you need to maybe be able to go long runs, despite the fact that they all joke about it being a big pack race. They had confidence in green flag runs, and that's why a lot of them also spent some time practice and at the end of Q also practicing pit road entry.
Yeah, and the pit road entry, keep in mind, once these drivers have to come down in about approximately 25 to 60 plus laps, it's not an easy entry. If you hit the splitter, you're going around. Speaking of going around, John Fowler went around in 1 and 2. He's on the bottom of the track in the 89.
There's no yellow. We're going to stay green. Fowler slow on the pit lane exit, and it was contact with Gary Sexton that had those two cars get into an incident. Fowler's not happy about it, but there's no yellow, so there won't be any repercussions. They're discussing it with each other on the radio. There's the second look. Like Sexton might have come up, maybe Fowler came down. I'm sure they both blamed the opposite, but he never went all the way around. So there was no yellow. We stay green, and the battle for the race lead now swaps in favor of Adam Benefiel. It's the 83 Chevrolet now back on top. We talk about veterans. I mean, we look at the series history. Adam Benefiel is a name that's pretty synonymous with RealSimRacing competition, Justin, and for that matter, Daniel Eberhardt behind as well. But it has been the Andrew Friedage series for years now. 2018, 2019 Full Throttle Cup Series champion, as well as dominating in the Icebreaker Winter Series as well. These guys have been here through that. They have been contenders through that. And I'll tell you what, they're probably sick and tired of playing second fiddle. And eventually that Friedage went winless in that opening round. The race wins went to Daniel Eberhardt and Michael Laraya. Laraya quiet so far tonight, back in 11th position. But this may be, I think, the best championship battle amongst these three, Laraya and anybody else that you want to toss into that mix as a championship competitor. This may be one of the best championship fights we've seen at RSR in quite a few years.
Yeah, because the past couple years with Freenash and his championship runs, he put on a clinic in terms of victories. Double-digit victories both seasons. It hasn't been as quite clear-cut when it comes to being able to win in this type of a series this season. Because you've had Coke drivers make some starts. You have Adam Benefiel looking to become more active in the league racing scene this year. You have other competitors rising up and becoming even better than they were last year. And you have more teams seeing interest and competing at a race-winning level in this series. So this is the toughest challenges I think Freenash has had in a while. And in turn, you have to think, some of these drivers have carried that success in series such as this to Road to Pro campaigns like Freenash did where he ran for Lowline Racing this year for an RTP campaign.
And we've seen more competition. You talk about those drivers returning, improving. We have seen a handful of great drivers make rookie campaigns here that have shown, flashes of brilliance that haven't even been able to commit to a full season campaign. If they come back in 2021, they're going to be that much more difficult. We've seen 63 different drivers compete in races here this season, and those drivers as well, when you look at all of them, combining for 12 different race winners. You compare that to only 52 different drivers from last year and only 9 different race winners. So the competition in this series in 2020 surpassing that of what we saw in 2019, and that's not to take away from all the great racing we saw last year. It was no walk in the park from Andrew Friedage, but he won nearly 50% of the races that he started. This season, you don't have those guarantees, and maybe it's because you have a year of this package under everybody's belt by now.
Yes, I think that's a big play of it, because some of them have definitely struggled for a good 6 months even to get used to, how do I go as fast as I can with this package and hold as much throttle as I can without completely frying the tires. Daniel Eberhardt's the best example, I think, of that, Evan, where he was good in the early part of the season with the low downforce package, nearly won in Atlanta, and then once the high downforce hit, he just wasn't the same all season until all the way to the second race at Dover, I believe. It just didn't mesh with his driving style. Even then, Andrew Friedage took at least a few weeks and about a month or so to get used to the package. So it's not just as simple as apples to apples. It has that adjustment period where, say you're used to having off-throttle time or letting the car rotate while letting it roll in the center. You had to change your entire perspective how you drive these cup cars with this higher downforce about a year ago. And now I think it's paying the dividends to where you have racing a series like this. You know how your skills are judged out, essentially.
And they made tweaks, of course, you mentioned with the, I guess, adjustments to how the package and packages, in theory, have been implemented over the course of, the different size tracks and whatnot. And the schedule didn't really change a ton, to the 30-week number, which was the aim. So a little bit shorter and more compressed than last year, I think makes it that much more impressive that we've seen that increased variance and more drivers competing, and as well, more individual race winners from the 2019 campaign. But, I mean, you blank it out, right-hand side of your screen is the number 21 machine. I was impressed early in this race, in practice, by what we saw out of Alverson and the speed that had him up at the very top of the board. He's now in a battle for 12th position on back. It's like Jeremy E. Miller, Michael Lariah in the mix, and Lariah really losing out here. Justin, race winner from the round of 16. Going to fall to 13th if he's not lucky, maybe worse, because Scott going to get on by Daniel Scott, a driver who was just eliminated in the previous round, and Michael Lariah stuck right now, 15th position. I know we had that 3-point advantage in the points coming into this race, but other than that, this is not a very good start, and he's not going to be where he wants headed to Dega if he can't pick up and improve, and it looks like he's only going to struggle more as this run carries on because he's continuing to drop. Again, this battle, 15th on back, right-hand side of your screen, the battle for the race lead and everybody else left.
Thomas George up the 4th spot, but here's the thing. Cars are up in the wall. Here we go. McBride in the grass.
McBride into the grass, and he's not the only one. Somebody else down there as well. No caution, though. We stay green. The 5 is back on track. The other driver involved was Jeremy E. Miller, and it was his solo incident for the 5, I think, that started all of it. McBride is back on track. We stay green. Here's what happened.
Yeah, and he
got touched.
Yeah, by Alverson, in fact. And as he tried to get going, just went right to the door of Miller. Not going to be happy on the radio there, as that car below was definitely pushing way up the track.
So everybody holds their breath. We make things around one more time, and we're going to be okay. And there it is. I mean, you could see there was nothing Miller could do. He spun down and onto the pit lane. And opted to drive through and was able to get away with that, so he'll be all right. And big hit for McBride, of course, notably, talking earlier about the drivers who missed out. McBride's championship hopes came to an end last week when that round of 16 ended at the virtual Bristol Motor Speedway. So side by side for second, the big 3 tonight, if you will, are trying their best to get away from 4th and 5th. McClendon and George really doing a good job, though, of not allowing that to happen. You can see they're right there, but in exchange for 2 and 3, as Daniel Eberhardt holds off. Andrew Friedrich wants to go back to the race lead. Something tells me these three are going to be going at it all night long. And with the separation, Justin, I mean, the top 6 cars only separated by 0.8 of a second. The undercut on pit road could be huge here, because we're already looking at about 1.5 seconds of fall-offs. I mean, for the one stop to the end, that could be the race.
Possibly. And that's why I think for the drivers who came down to pit, it's more in a realistic realm. Most of those drivers, though, are still in the teams. For the drivers who stayed out, I think they may have been able to just save enough to get there, but it's going to be tight because halfway is 62.5 laps. Remember, most teams have only gotten to 62, and that was either not just in the Coke Series, as well in official races where 2 said Coke drivers did that after clutch and coasting for a good half of their final run of the race. In other words, this is going to have to be well calculated. Should note that one car did pit off cycle. The 50 of Ross Cato came down, and he may be trying to 2-stop, following maybe the Coke strategy of going 40, then 80 to the end.
You do have different options. Brett McBride not happy on the radio after he was involved in that incident with Jeremy E. Miller. Of course, he was involved in a lot of incidents in the round of 16. Just basically rotten luck for that AMSOIL team, and he's not very happy with the non-playoff drivers who were factors in many of those incidents, including that most recent incident, although he's no longer a playoff driver, but in it with Jeremy E. Miller, something that he was not very happy about, and voicing his displeasure on the radio as well. 1, 2, 3 on top of each other, 45 laps down at Vegas, this time through and down the Nellis Straight. Here comes Eberhardt looking for the race lead for the first time tonight, almost clearing, but it is the outside. Benefiel hanging on. Good effort for the 90, but not enough, and they will tuck back in line.
It's the tricky part once the tires wear out, is getting a big enough run to make the pass. And I think, again, if you are Eberhardt or Freenotch, you have to get to the outside and pinch him on down, Benefiel. Because at this point, Benefiel can do the same to you and completely hurt your run. Narcar coming in this time. Matt Alberson going off cycle from 12th position here. So a couple drivers are trying to 2-stop who did not top off under the caution.
And it was a close call with he coming down to the pit lane. It was on the brakes right in front of Michael Araya, who was behind him, but he gave him enough of a heads up that he was able to check up. So Alverson is in at lap number 40. Maybe more so, Justin, akin to the 2-stopper. With 78 laps still on the board, and obviously the call is going to be 4 tires and fuel. Just not sure if it's the gamble to play, but I mean, why not? I talked about impressive rookies. Matt Alverson's only made a handful of starts. He was running on the cusp of the top 10. Why not try something different?
Well, if you haven't been saving fuel, then this is kind of your main strat if you didn't come down and start in the 20s on the last restart. You're not going to be able to make it unless you've started saving in the first few laps of the last green flag to be able to make it to the checkered flag, or make it, I should say, at least to about 61 or 62 laps to go. I have full confidence the drivers in the top 3 are essentially taking this chance to save this fuel and be able to try and make sure they don't run out of gas. If there is the 2-stop, that expected window opens about next time by.
We'll see as the radio chatter picks up if drivers going to opt to flock to pit road. And, want to talk about everybody through the field in this race, but don't want to look away from the guys up front, because I have a good feeling that if we step away for a minute, they're all going to go 2-3 wide and do some craziness. But kind of looking at different drivers through the field, we talked about Matt Mara a little bit earlier in this race, and we have his onboard camera with us this evening. It's a bit of a slower number 23 Toyota than how the night started for Matt. He's back in 31st position with a bit of damage obviously involved in that one and only yellow flag so far to this point. But we'll be having that onboard cam with Matt and kind of checking in with that as the night works on. Trevin Valderrama battling for 30th and 31st, some 20 seconds off for the race lead, which means that by the time we get through a cycle of pit stops, and there is Matt, right-hand side of your screen, using the VR goggles and the onboard look on the left hand. closer to halfway in this race. Race leader is going to have to start to deal with lap traffic, which hasn't been a huge issue to this point yet.
A couple cars just pit to his left side, but here's one of the advantages when it comes to VR is it helps you kind of see your marks a little bit, or at least in my opinion, and see, for example, moments like this. Clipping the grass Valderrama, or apron I should say, for the O2, force the squeeze, and sometimes if you have even triple monitors, you might not be able to tell exactly where your position is. In VR, if you wanted, you can just poke your head to the right and see, okay, how close am I to this car? Now, there is still the downsides, though, of sometimes it can throw you off. Sometimes drivers may not have as best of a mirror available to them, so to speak. So there are the benefits and the positives with this type of racing setup he has for tonight's race. And keep in mind, this damage is going to be hurting him the rest of the run unless he gets a caution to fix all of it, because it's going to affect his ability to even suck up to the back of anybody.
Well, it's funny with the monitor there, because as he moves his head around, you see that reflected in the monitor. So if you're wondering, well, what's he looking at, you can see it. So when he looks down to his right, that monitor moves, you can kind of see what he's doing in the car to look to his left and his right. Of course, serves him no benefit. He's got the goggles on, but it is an exact representation of what he's seen. Allows us to kind of see, well, what's he checking out when he's looking to his left or to his right, or whatever he may be doing. And looks like he and the O2 are having a ton of fun back here in the battle, which is now for 26th and 27th, even 25th and 26th now, because drivers have been heading down to the pit lane. We talked about Alverson, but Kamer, Scott, also Michael Kaczynski, recent drivers who have come down pit roads for some service, as these two continue to go at it. Nothing changing up at the front of the field.
And the one thing I notice here too is this is a lot more steering input than I think some may put here at Las Vegas, because you can put too much in it. What I mean by that is you can actually have it to where you almost lock up the right front tire and completely shred that said tire. I think this is why we're seeing him so tight when trying to even get by Valderrama, even though he feels quicker here, is once he gets under there, that right side tire has just been completely overheated by too much turn. When he turns it a little, like an extra couple degrees less, he usually gets a good rotation. He rotates it a bit more, that car just cannot get the proper cut it needs to make a pass.
And that's the key with making the car last a long ways, is the less amount of input you're putting, the less force, in theory, you're going to be exuding on those tires as they lose that lateral grip and they slide, and that's really how they get that wear and tear. Picking up the battle for the race lead, the 75 of Steve Soa is not in this battle. He just came down for service, so his fresh tires allowed him to pass these cars back. But a late driver emerging is Scott McClendon. He hasn't been way back. Started 6th, is 4th right now. He's that yellow, red, and white Chevy, 4th in line amongst your leaders. But he really wasn't somebody making a lot of moves. Was kind of hanging back 5th. I talked about those top 3. Looked like they were maybe going to be able to pull away from everybody else. Now McClendon has been able to shake them, and he has been all over Andrew Faridas, wanting to make some moves. Good on the long run. A huge plus, the way this thing's looking right now.
And looking nice and strong for him so far. They do have some traffic coming up in Ross Cato and company, but nice and steady for these top contenders. And these drivers, I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to be trying as much as they can to get to that 61 to go mark to make sure they don't have to oversave on fuel. If we see them cut underneath, it's going to be a bit risky in terms of can they catch up. The best example I can think of is an NIS race on Thursday afternoon, where some of the Coke drivers were able to pit under the first caution around the same time as what we had, Evan, save the fuel, and then were able to win by 1 second over Brad Davies. Win at the time, I believe, went towards Michael Guest, then it was followed by Kane Cook. But a new race later, Eberhardt was able to get that squeeze line we talked about finally.
It finally made it work. It took several attempts, but he was able to sneak to the outside of Benefield into turn 1. It's a move that, these drivers have tried to do, but oftentimes it's pretty easy to keep a car to your inside, and we've talked about how, well, yeah, just because the inside's open doesn't make it a viable passing lane. But I think for the 83 at Benefield, I think he just got caught sleeping a little bit. The 90 got the nose to the outside into one. He made the pass. He now goes to the race lead as more lapped cars enter the fray. That's the number 50 machine of Ross Cato, smack dab in the middle of your leaders, trying to find a safe passage through, but obviously a little bit timid, not wanting to be too much of a factor. But if he sits in between them right now, it's going to be to the disadvantage of those cars in third and fourth.
Oh, and Benefield's coming this time. That's why he's staying low down here on the racetrack. I don't think he can make it on just one stop under green.
I don't think he's the only one either. So it's Benefield to pit road. It looks like, though, yeah, everybody else able to stay out longer. So Benefield's in, having completed 61 laps of racing. There are 64 laps to go, Justin. But those 64 are going to be even more difficult than the 61 because he had about 4 or 5 caution laps to use earlier in this race. There's no guarantee you'll have those later, so he is really going to be tight, but I don't think he's short by a mile. Everhart, in this time, he'll relinquish the race lead. Friedage and McClendon enough to go at least one more time around.
And they may be able, for the cars who just stayed out here, just barely be able to save enough. It's just the amount of how much time they'll have on the racetrack. That puts up a lot of focus on your first driver who hit under that caution, Dylan Jones, who is with Agnell Phillip. Those two can comfortably make their pit stop, have fresher tires the rest of this run, and in turn, there's a chance they end up being the lead cars, depending on how things shape out, possibly.
And Friedage stays out again. McClendon down pit road, completing 63, 62 to go. He'll be closer, but every lap that you can knock off here gives you a little bit more insurance to the second half. And the benefit of iRacing is, unlike in real life, you don't have to guesstimate with your crew chief on how much fuel you're getting in the car, depending on what kind of live timing and telemetry you're using. In addition to the onboard stuff with iRacing, you're going to have a pretty good idea. He is in from the race lead. Friedage makes it to 64 laps. Sam Nieto, Thomas George, Brian Chambliss, all going to follow him down. Dylan Jones now will assume the race lead, who has not been having a very good night, but he'll pick up a bonus point for a lap led.
Remember, just like I mentioned, him and Phillip were among those drivers who topped off and had service. Jones had a 37 pit stop in that sequence, 37 second stop. Phillip just topped off. So they also, in theory, one may have used their set in Jones, the other and Phillip did not. So on top of being able to make it on one stop the rest of this race, they also potentially could have that advantage on the tires if anything happens.
And that's big because it benefits them in the strategy in which this race goes green, but would also benefit the driver who didn't take tires in the event that there's a yellow. And you can see Dylan Jones, yeah, he's the race leader, but he's getting his doors blown off as everybody else now cycles back through. Eberhardt ahead of Benefield as they pitted, so those drivers don't swap positions tentatively. Those cars are 12th and 13th, but will likely cycle through to somewhere close to the race lead.
Jones actually came in. I think the reason he did this is he doesn't want to lose too much time to the drivers who just pit a couple laps ago. And just double check, this is just his first set being used. Apparently he jumped out of the car to look at replays, and Phillip is now trying to counter him. This time he's coming in.
Those two drivers are playing a game of cat and mouse and a little bit of a strategy of their own. We are not sure if the race leaders leading up to this cycle can go the distance. They are awfully close on fuel, but certainly in the case of Jones and Phillip, they can. They come down with 59, and now for Phillip, 58 laps to go respectively. It'll be interesting to see how they blend back out on track. Dylan Jones is on pit road with Phillip directly behind him. The 94 is going to go in for service. And let's see how those drivers blend out and how far behind the rest of the race leaders are. They are, I should say, again, knowing who's safe and who isn't.
And I'm looking at the pit stop times. Jones had a bit of a longer stop again. Something has been going on with the 11 car, where he had a 29-second pit stop. Phillip, meanwhile, the normal 14.8-second stop. So it's been a rough night for Jones. Something must be happening with his equipment to have those longer stops and having to jump out and see what's going on. All out Gary Sexton, along with Kyle Trudell and Sean Kalis in the best position to try and come away with the race win here with the freshest tires on the track by the time they stretch the fuel and make it to the end of the race if it stays green.
You can see Sexton, you mentioned, to the race lead. He has won as Matthew Mara as well. Somebody who we checked in with has also yet pitted. He's one of only 5 cars or so that hasn't pitted. Your top 3 have it. That's Sexton, Trudell, and Kalis. A little bit further down, Matt Mara hasn't in 7th. And I was about to say that Trevin Valderrama also has not, and that is true. He will be down pit lane shortly. He's only 57 laps or so in, so you can guesstimate those guys have about 5 or so laps left until they're going to be forced down to pit road. But certainly pushing it. Again, I think at this point, drivers trying to stand to benefit from a timely caution flag. And when this is all done, again, you have a lot of varying strategy, but Daniel Eberhardt's your leader on this strategy. He rides in 7th, Justin. He won't go to the race lead right away, though, because Kamer, Cato, and Alverson, those drivers who pitted some 20 laps ago, got fresh rubber first. They were able to cycle up in front of him, but those drivers not going to be able to go to distance. So you got like 3 or 4 different strategies in this race right now.
And the tough part is some of those strategies have to make up a ton of time, and not just because of this craziness here. 3 wide. This is with Miller trying to move out of the way in the 34.
Yeah, that's really tight with Benefield in the middle. It's Miller up top, but the car's on the bottom, fighting for position. There's that trio. Eberhardt leading, Friedage to the inside, Benefield looking high, and again, the Nani car ends up in front. So this is, if they can make it on fuel, going to be the battle for the race win. But right now, only for 5th on back. More cars down pit road as Trudell is in with Mara.
Those were the scheduled stops. Trevin Valderrama among the drivers getting threaded by fresher tires at the end of this racetrack. The difficult part is, for the drivers who really stretched it already and tried to undercut the overcut, so to speak, they're way behind. Phil, he's 16 seconds behind these cars. We talked about Dylan Jones having a long pit stop. He's 42 seconds back at Gary Sexton at the moment, and an extra about 10 or so seconds behind these cars. So it's not going to be as simple as, okay, we can make it on gas. They're going to need to hope they can catch the time while these drivers have to clutch and coast with just a couple lap difference on their tires and that massive fall-off difference we talked about.
Gary Sexton now is down pit road. It is Sean Kalis alone at the top of the scoring pylon who has yet to come down pit road. He's got at least 1 more lap in him, having completed 63 laps on this set of fuel. Granted, he did have about a 2 or 3 lap grace period when he came down under that first, and so far only caution flag of the evening to get some fuel. You can save about a half a lap of fuel under yellow compared to what you would do under green, so I'm thinking his max is 64, 65. Wouldn't be shocked if he's in this time, and then it would hand the race lead over to the trio. Friedage now pulling on Daniel Eberhardt and Adam Benefield. And here comes Scott McClendon again, making the pass on the inside. You see Kalis, the right-hand side of your screen, is down pit road. So Andrew Friedage back to the lead, Justin. But Scott McClendon has been the best car in the long run. He's got a real good shot at this race. And don't look now, but Joseph Tice, quiet, but he now takes away 4th as Benefield is struggling.
He's up 19 positions, and it's your biggest mover, by the way. Was about to mention that at some points because he was just slowly creeping up and running his own race, patient through the pack, and using that long run pace by not burning up the equipment. Now, finally see him towards the front, and as long as you're good in pit stop sequences, you can gain that time massively. The main thing's going to be as well, though, how the 2-stop strats work out here, because Kyle Kamer is just a couple tenths of a second behind all these cars, for example. You also have drivers trying that out like Daniel Scott, like Ross Cato, like Matt Alberson. Will they end up falling several laps down and not being able to get their laps back? Or will they be able to somehow do the impossible and zoom through the field in 33 laps? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, right now, I would say that the drivers on the two-stop strategy, it's going to work out very poorly for them. I don't think any of them are going to gain a position compared to in which they were running before this cycle began, because they're already on the back foot. They're going to be maybe 10-ish seconds, even more behind. You're going to give up a lap, obviously, to get the fresh tires, and you'll have the benefit, but I don't think you're going to have the benefit to make up a lap and a half or whatever it ends up being. So I just don't think the two-stop's going to work. And, listen, sometimes you got to gamble. Like I said, some of those drivers made that decision because they really had nothing to lose. All your playoff drivers, very consistent in the calls. They all stretched and are trying to go to one. The likes of Kamer, the likes of Scott, Soa, Kuczynski, drivers who look like they're certainly not going to be able to go to the end on fuel and therefore are in the two-stop strategy, even if that wasn't maybe by design from the start. Those are non-playoff cars, maybe a little bit more adept to take gambles, and I just don't think it's going to work out.
Trying to fit the Las Vegas theme in very well, I can tell. But
you got to do what you got to do, man. You got to get those gambling references in.
yes, you kind of do at times. But it's a good analogy, too, where the drivers who are not in the playoffs, they don't have as much, how do I put this, collateral to wage in at the table, where they don't have much at risk, where they can bet as much as they want. As long as they don't break the rules or end up collecting playoff drivers, there's a 9 times out of 10 chance if they do well, they're going to be able to come away with the winnings. If they don't do well, then, well, you only lost maybe $1 or so in penny machines. But for the playoff drivers, they're essentially set to the max on those type of machines. Instead of, say, being a 1 cent or a 10 cent a spin, it's more so up to the $5 a spin, to where if you do not win on those spins, guess what? Instead of being down maybe a couple dollars like some of the non-playoff drivers, you're down hundreds of dollars and maybe thousands of dollars in terms of trying to compete for a championship. That's how tight these playoffs are. And that's kind of the scenarios where you have those differences from the casual to the more, how do I put this, active at the casino side.
And you're on board with Ross Cato. He rides in 12th. That's Matt Alverson up the road, one of the drivers we talked about, who is on the 35-lap old tires, not going to be able to go the distance. Cato also, you're expecting that these cars are going to drop way back and their gamble doesn't work out. Of course, there's a chance that a yellow could help them, but there's no scenario where a yellow wins them this race, because if anybody else has to pit that's not on this strategy, it's because they missed it by a lap. And I think at that point, you'd rather run out of fuel hoping you can get to the end than, come in for the splash if you're talking about the race leaders. If a yellow comes out now, great, you're 11th. If a yellow comes out in 30 laps, great, you're 21st. They are not in a position to stay out and try to benefit from a yellow, which is kind of the flip side of strategy, where we saw some of those drivers stay out a long time, the likes of Sexton and others, hoping to get a yellow. For the drivers on the two-stop, or a caution doesn't help them in any which way. But there's 24 cars on the lead lap right now. Again, we've been green since the opening yellow at lap number 10 in this race, and it is a great battle for the lead as Eberhardt gets a nose to the outside. It's the second time he's been able to do that. This time, though, it doesn't work because he washed up, and that was not a good effort for the number 90 car, as Farinas made the defense look easy. Here comes McClendon and Tice now. 3rd and 4th are reeling those guys in.
Yeah, I'm listening on board of the throttle inputs. Eberhardt has not been clutching coasting in this fight. He actually lifted at the start and finish line because I think he just wants to use the draft to be able to try and save fuel behind the 88. I'm not quite sure why you wouldn't clutch and coast in this scenario with you being as far out to the projection as we've seen. But, I mean, if you feel like you're not going to make enough fuel, I mean, you would have to push in theory. Or at least may try and push to see what you can try and do and hope for the caution.
And that, I think, is, you talk about saving fuel and drafting, as Frenage knows now, and he'll let the Donnie car go to the inside, which I thought was a defensive move, but it doesn't really work because Daniel Eberhardt had such a run. Inside or not, he got it. So the 9 in the lead, he's nearly into the outside wall as he way overdrove turn 2, stays in front. Frenage pushing him down the back straightaway, and these cars are going at it. But we saw, remember, the 88 went a lap further than anybody else did. That's because he was kind of riding in third for the majority of the first run. Maybe saving that little bit of fuel. He maybe needs to save less than these other cars. That's why he was up in front. But clearly Daniel Eberhardt's got his fuel number. I don't think he'd be racing like this for the lead if he needed to save anything. So I'm assuming 1, 2, 3, 4 are good. Maybe Tice conserving just a little bit. He's been out there on 24 lap gold tires. That puts him in the middle, and he really hasn't been in any of the 2 or 3 wide like the other cars.
Yeah, I think he's just picking his spots here and just wanting to stay within the lead group to make sure that if anything was to be too active, so to speak, here, he pounced. There's a difference, though. McClendon, he's not clutch and coasting. Frenage, not clutch and coasting. Eberhardt, not clutch and coasting. If you listen on board with the 1, he's clutch and coasting.
Well, let's see as we watch this battle. Let's go on board with Joseph Tice in 4th. He isn't able to keep up with these drivers by implementing that strategy. You can see he's dropped about 7 or 8 car lengths back. The difference is 0.8 of a second. Let's go on board with him and maybe listen in to what Joseph Tice is doing here to try to get to the end of this race. Right there, turn 3.
He's doing it in turn 1 and 2 as well. It's surprising to me that the top 3 are not doing that, though. Maybe they feel a little more comfy, but Joseph wants to be that little bit more safe.
And again, in iRacing, you know, right? I mean, in real life, you can guesstimate. Your crew chief will tell you, hey, I need you to save me a lap, and the veterans will kind of know how much they need to back off to do that. In iRacing, you can get an exact amount of how much fuel to the gallon you have in the tank and an estimation of how many laps that will make.
Oh,
so
Eberhardt just came in.
Oh, so he can't do it. He is short, and Daniel Eberhardt is in at lap number 91. So this is big, because if it was a 2-lap difference, Justin, or 1 or 2 laps on fuel, I would think that he would have done everything he could to sit third, draft, and save. It would have been tough, but I think he would have tried to save it. By that logic, then, is anybody up front able to go the distance?
Again, I think Frenage, McClendon, and Joseph Tice, since he's been clutching coasting, are in the spot where they may be comfy. However, that was the thought when I had in my head when Eberhardt came down when he did. It was about a lap or 2 too early. In that black box you talked about to be able to tell you that, isn't going to tell you that Benefield can't make it either.
So Adam Benefield, 31 laps since he pitted. He was one of those first drivers in. We knew he wasn't going to be able to go, or we thought that he was one of the drivers at risk. He comes down pit road. You can also put then Eric Stanford in that category. He pitted 2 laps even earlier than Benefield did. So he likely not going to be able to go the distance in this race from Las Vegas. And Scott McClendon now, who has shown no fear, has closed in on Andrew Frenage for the race lead. He has 1 extra lap on fuel. So there is a slight advantage in these two, the 88 over the 22, the battle for the race lead. But at this point, I thought I had an idea, Justin. Joseph Tice also down pit road. He can't make it. And he pitted, by the way, just want to mention, on the same lap that Scott McClendon did.
So that 1 extra lap by George, Chambliss, and Frenage, if this is looking right, may just be in that range. Here's the thing. Philip leads the drivers who have had hit on the undercut of the overcut, so to speak, we talked about. So this is now the chance for Philip and Lariah to try and fight for the race win if everyone else has to come down like this.
Yeah, that would be ideal for those drivers. Remember, they pitted same lap as McClendon and some of the other drivers, so it's going to come down to individual saving, but I really thought that the difference was going to be, 1 or 2 laps. And if I was only 1 or 2 laps short, then I would, I would not have pitted with 30-something laps to go in the race. I would have tried, probably unsuccessfully, but I would have at least tried to have done it. Lariah and Davis have been out there for 32 laps. That's the same amount of laps in which Thomas George, Brian Chambliss, and Andrew Friedage have been on track. John Rodden's even longer, I should say, but Agnell Phillip is the best sitting driver. Only 29 laps on tires in P5. Could he be a quiet surprise?
I think it's likely surprise with the numbers here. But again, I don't know about the fuel even for these cars because I haven't heard too much clutch and coasting for either of these guys. And even then, drivers on Tuesday thought 60 was going to be tight, let alone 62 without fuel save. I still think Phillip absolutely is in the driver's seat now for this, with the coaching he's got, and the drivers who have to pit having to have a massive pit delta of about 55 seconds, not including the pit exit.
And if they can't make it, they are certainly doing a
back
good
straight
job.
away.
It's in
Eberhardt's
front of the
crashing.
leaders. The 90 cars around. Andrew Friedage is involved, and we have a yellow at lap number 99. Daniel Eberhardt was blowing through the field on fresh tires, got sideways, and I think, Justin, he took out the 30.
Yeah, I don't know what in the world Eberhardt is doing. He's on much fresher tires, so he knows those cars aren't going to be as quick on the corner exit, but just trying to go full throttle and thread the needle past everybody instead of, being patient and waiting an extra corner. On top of that, Kaczynski was starting to get a little bit on the looser side for whatever reason off the corner up the track, while Eberhardt hooked down towards him. What in the world was he thinking?
And the big story there, not only that Daniel Eberhardt is taken out of this race, but watch this on board with Andrew Friedage. Nowhere to go, trying to stay above a wrecking Kaczynski, got door slammed by a spinning Eberhardt, and while Daniel Eberhardt is out, Andrew Friedage will lead your leaders down pit road, a lead lap that is only 12 cars deep for the moment. Lots of them will stay out for a wave by, but I see no way that Daniel Eberhardt wins this, or I should say Friedage, wins this race with the damage on the right side of that car. He might just sit in the box and try to fix it and give up the top spot.
And not just because of the damage and the effect it's going to have for towing in. A lot of drivers have struggled with overheating with that side type of damage throughout the race. That quarter panel part of me is also going to be an absolute pain to try and fix, because with that amount of damage, that will kill the right rear tire if he doesn't get this fixed.
And for the race off of pit road, Scott McClendon, 4 tires, but he gets beat off pit road by both Brian Chambliss and Thomas George Justin, who went for 4 tires also. Scott McClendon could have arguably have been in the catbird seat for this race. He said over the radio that he did not want to see that yellow. That implies to me that he was confident on his fuel number. You can see Friedage is still in the box getting that car repaired, and who would have thought 5 laps ago that Brian Chambliss is leading this race?
We'll talk about crazy twists. I'm not sure how many cars can realistically even take the wave without being at risk of running out of fuel here now, even, because we have a mix of 37 lap old tires to 7 laps to 12 laps to 29 laps. It's absolute madness here where, yes, we're at under 25 to go now, but some of these cars, if they don't get an air caution, are essentially sitting ducks here for the rest of this race. I'm not sure who's even going to win this type of race now with all of this, with essentially your lucky dog being Dylan Jones, and after all these cars having to get repairs, maybe 10 competitive cars on the lead lap who are going to be on the freshest tires?
Yeah, 11th if you count Jones, if not 12th. 12th through 27th are the drivers who stay out and will go from one lap down to the lead lap. But as you mentioned, they're going to maintain on old tires. For some of them, that's not a lot. As little as 6-lap-old tires for David Washington and Daniel Scott, as many as 37-lap-old tires for Jeremy E. Miller, but they will not be on the fresh rubber, that 1st through 11th C. Frenage was able to get out of the box, Justin, so he doesn't lose lead lap status, but I don't think he was able to get as much repairs gotten on that car as were given to him as an option. So he'll probably finish around 11th position, if not worse. If you get a yellow and the cars behind can get tires, this could be real bad of a twist for the 88 late in this race.
Yeah, this is going to be now one of the toughest rounds of the season, I think, for Frenage. I think he's got the skill to keep it up towards the front. But oh boy, this is going to be difficult. Eberhard now is going to be way behind the 8 ball, especially with some of the bad luck him and his fellow friends have had at super speedway races this year and in past seasons. This championship just got blown wide open because of that major mistake.
So the waiver rounds go on through. We will reset and we will try again. Brian Chambliss, who started this race 21st position, and with the benefit of only one single yellow, was able to drive his way into the conversation with some of the fast cars, and he now finds himself leading a race, looking for a free ticket to the round of 8. Thomas George alongside him, both those cars looking to win and move on. Michael Araya quiet all night. He's 5th. Grant Davis, we barely talked about him. He is 6th. 4 of your top 6 drivers are playoff competitors looking for a win that would take them through, and it would be no worries headed to Talladega next week and the Charlotte Motor Speedway Roval the week after that. Here we go. Pace car down pit road. Brian Chambliss in control of the field with 22 laps to go.
And a bit of a bobble from the 33 held up Jones, your lucky dog, and tons of waves are going to need to hope for some type of luck. Again, I think Phillip was in the best spot to try and fight for that race win before that. Good on the fuel by a mile, had fresher tires, and now he's going to have to work for it with several playoff drivers surrounding him. Him and McClendon are the only drivers inside the top 6, not in the playoffs.
And it looked like McClendon had or Chambliss, I should say, sorry, had a great restart, got way out in front, but a good start, maybe not a good one when you talk about this package, because everybody then chased him down at a 2. He doesn't even lead that lap. It goes to Scott McClendon on the outside of the front row there, side by side for the lead. Here comes Zagnall Phillip. Chambliss going to protect the inside, so the 94 will give him a push into turn 3.
You take the momentum wherever you can get it right. If you're on the bottom, may as well try and push the momentum forward. Don't want to risk it 3 wide, and it looks like Chambliss just wants to take the short way around and somehow find a run to get clear of this 22.
But everything he can to work that inside line for Phillip, trying to open up a 3rd lane on the bottom, wasn't able to do so. Thomas George, the 9, did not have a good restart. He fell back. Now he's back in the conversation, working with McClendon as Phillip abandons the bottom line. He'll tuck up to the outside. So now here comes the 44 of Lariah. The outside, though, still the better place to be. Scott McClendon, again, race leader that time with 19 laps to go.
Well, this is going to be big as Robin just clipped the apron and checked everybody up, trouble towards the back.
A big pucker moment there as they check up and scatter on the back straightaway. No yellow, they're all okay. We stay green. Now it is only Brian Chambliss working the inside as the top 10 start to single file out. He cuts to the apron, tries to shorten this 1.5 mile racetrack as much as he possibly can, but he's tight that time, squeezing McClendon to the fence, but the 22 stays in the gas.
He's going to need to try and somehow find a hole, and fast. McClendon, though, just ate part of that hole. If Chambliss doesn't get up there, he's going to get freight trained by this top line in a couple laps.
He needs to get up there, and he missed his opportunity there. Wasn't able to get in line behind the number 22, and now he's in a battle side by side for the 9 car, fighting for second position. A little bit better, again, on the inside, right there, but not enough to get the spot. The 9 pulls the advantage off the high side and down the backstretch. And honestly, Justin, if this battle for second continues on, it's going to help McClendon as well try to open up a bit of an advantage.
Yeah, because the side draft can cost you about a couple tenths here at this racetrack. Not as much as, say, the half a second at some of the other tracks. But here, it holds you up just that little bit with that one driver on the bottom having to check up, and you need to give that space on the top. The thing is, McClendon at the same time needs to play this smart a little bit. Try and balance out who gets his draft. Go top on exit, bottom in the middle of the straights, then back up towards the top to try and pull them along, and back and forth as finally clears George.
Scott McClendon has started 53 races in the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series. He is looking for career win number 1, but there are no guarantees. Here comes Thomas George, looking to the inside. Battle for the race lead to turn number 3. The outside, though, has been able to hold off these battles all night long, but he can't do it there. George gets those in front. Now McClendon from behind, trying to stay on the door. He is not going to give up, but there it is. New race leader, Thomas George.
And McClendon's tires just going off at the wrong moment, but with this package, with this fixed setup, if you get the draft, you can get it back. You just need to get towards that outer line in some cases. Just seems, though, that McClendon just isn't getting that speed he needs on that line, and now he's getting left out to dry.
And Chambliss now back in the conversation. Thought that he may have fallen back a little bit off for the restart, but he is right back in the middle of it now. He'll slide up, get that safer outside line. How can he make this work now? McClendon forcing him as a push. McClendon, though, lifts in 3, and it's Agnell Phillip slotting to position number 3. Now there's only 12 laps to go at Vegas. You've got 9 cars within 1 second of the race lead as Farina is stuck P10 with damage. Thomas George sitting pretty.
And don't forget, Agnell Phillip, we've mentioned his name a couple times tonight. He's now back in the mix for the race lead again. Can he finally get himself to victory lane in the 94 machine? All while Dylan Jones is also quietly at the back end of this pack with Gary Sexton and company.
Very different things on the line for Thomas George, a 6-time race winner in RSR competition, looking for a win to advance him to the round of 8. But now he's under fire by Brian Chambliss, the 25 car, slotting through on the inside. Now he'll take over the race lead.
And Chambliss, mind you, is looking for his first win in the series as well in 78 starts. He might have a shot. He's just finished in the top 5 9 times, Evan, in his career. This is his best shot that he's had yet.
And after Bristol Motor Speedway, when we sent home those bottom drivers, it was Brian Chambliss who had an abysmal performance at Thunder Valley. He dropped 6 positions. He fell all the way to 12th, only finishing 2 points ahead of Kyle Kamer and Daniel Scott for that final transfer position after he finished that race 27th. Very likely, maybe he didn't even make it this far. Instead, just squeaks out the cut. He's now leading at Las Vegas this time by. He will be 8 laps away from a surefire spot in the round of 8, but here comes Phillip to the inside of George on the bottom in turn 3.
And the fall off is starting to really kick in, about a second or so. This is not going to be easy. At the same time, if it takes too long for this pass, this may be enough of a cushion for Chambliss to try and hold on.
On the inside, the bottom, adjusted as we've raced off into the night, has really started to get more grip than it had earlier in the evening, and Phillip gets it done. Slides up over the nose of the 9. Agnell Phillip now sole possession of second, but it is a half a second difference to Brian Chambliss. I can only imagine how much mirror checking he's doing and maybe what his heart rate is, because Chambliss looking real good, as the next best battle is Lariah and Dylan Jones for 6th and 7th.
And Phillip and company actually lost about a tenth or two on that corner exit there. So Chambliss is checking out in the clean air. This is exactly what he needed here, as Phillip is struggling on corner entry to close back up.
And before we had that caution, just shy of lap number 100, actually basically on the money for lap number 100, depending on where you were running in the field, Brian Chambliss was 4th. I mean, that's great, 21st to 4th, with the benefit of 1 yellow, but he was not in a position to challenge those top 3, the 3 cars that had had control of this race throughout most of it. You are looking on the right-hand side of your screen off of the back of the race leader, who is seeing his advantage grow to now 0.8 of a second over Agnell Phillip P2, 5 to go.
And he's having to think one main thing: just stay green. Because again, he's in the best spot. If we get a caution, you never know what's going to happen. So at this point, as long as they stay clean up to the front, he's going to be smiling here for the next 4 laps or so, as long as things don't get over aggressive for that fight between, say, George and McClendon.
And good news is it's clean track up the road. Not only, of course, is he ahead of the battle behind, but there's no lap traffic that Chambliss is going to have to deal with. The next closest car is 2 sets of corners away. Granted, that car is Steve Durham, who just got into the fence. But other than that, Brian Chambliss looking to hang on.
Oh, and Sexton into the wall.
Inside wall, no caution. We stay green at lap 122 after he and the 5 of Rhett McBride got together. Here's a second look. I mean, McBride was just a little bit tight, Justin, and Sexton was trying to stay on his door to not give up that spot, pushed him into the fence.
Sexton not happy as that's the lap car, but the counterpoint, there were 2.5 lanes above him. I think he wasn't expecting, McBride was, for him to be squeezing that tight on him at that moment. Still though, because no caution, still 2 laps to decide how this race fares out.
2 to go this time by. It's Popsicle 6 to the air for Brian Chambliss. Phillip now solidly in second. The battle going to be for third. Thomas George, Scott McClendon. It's George on the outside. He'll get the run at a 2. Penultimate time down the Nellis Super Straight.
Just need to get to the white flag for this to be perfect, and oh boy, he just intentionally took him out. Sexton just took out McBride.
Caution at lap number 124. After there is a caution in turn number 3. And we talk about what happened with McBride, what happened with Sexton, Justin. And it was the 13 taking out the 5. And this race will go to overtime.
Well, that's definitely going to be a penalty. That was definitely hunting him on down. Stay to the bottom. As soon as he's seen him, straight a hard right. You got to penalize that situation.
Yeah, we saw similar contact earlier in the playoffs when we were racing at Darlington. Suspensions handed out to a handful of drivers. It eliminated Jared Mogard from postseason contention after he was suspended for 3 weeks for a retaliation wreck, and there's no question on that one.
You can't even write how big that is. This just may have cost Chambliss the race, and now there's mixed strategy calls in all this, keep in mind. Here's McBride, who has probably not expecting this to happen.
And I don't think Brian Chambliss even knows what's happening. He asked if the yellow was because there was a car parked on the apron. So Brian Chambliss has no idea what just transpired.
And guess
And
what?
they
He
are-
stayed out here. And now with the older tires, I don't know if he's going to be able to hold on here. Freenosh, Rodden, and Miller also stayed out, but everybody else took 4. If I'm Chambliss, I am furious in the cockpit.
Yeah, Agnew Phillip is going to win the race off of pit road. An incident involving 2 non-playoff drivers is going to have big, big implications on the battle for the championship. Phillip exits pit road in 5th position. He will be the first car on fresh tires. You mentioned it. Everybody else came down pit road and as well took 4. So 1st through 4th are the drivers who didn't pit. 25-lap old tires for Chambliss, Freenosh, Rodden, and Miller. And Miller, I should say, Justin, I don't think is going to be able to make it. He's got to pit because he was on 62-lap old tires. So he's in a position where he's just going to try to save and limp this thing home. But all 4 of these cars going to get run over here. It is very unlikely that Brian Chambliss hangs on to win a race that should have been his.
And on top of that, what hurts him too is Rodden coming down along with some of the lap cars here. That buffer point may have helped a little bit, but these cars, I don't know if this is going to work. He may either get swallowed up coming to the white or during the last lap. And for Miller, he may only make it maybe this one green-white checkered and then have to come down to make it on the gas.
So the lights are still on top of the iRacing pace car. I'm surprised. I mean, as the race leader, Justin, Chambliss is in a tough spot. In his mind, he's thinking, if I pit, everybody else is going to stay out. But, you know, your strategy gave you a set of tires right now. So if he pits, yeah, some cars might stay out, but I think he's in the Agnew Phillip position of being the, kind of in the good spot here. But I'm surprised more so with Freenosh's decision to do what the car in front of him did and to stay with him, because I think they're all sitting ducks.
And Miller can't make it now either. Miller just backed out of this. So they're even more sitting ducks here. Even with 27 laps or so on the tires, about 23 green flag laps, that's going to be enough where I think they get bumped from behind in the corner. Even if they time up the restart well, they're not going to have enough grip, I don't think, to be able to go full throttle enough to be able to hold on for just even 2 laps. This is going to be tough. This is going to be very difficult.
And a friendly reminder, by the way, to those faster cars behind, as you see Miller getting topped off on fuel, that you cannot change lanes before the start-finish line. And with Miller dropping out, it is big implications because that will move the 9 car of George to the outside of row number 2. Agnew Phillip up to 3rd, as opposed to having been the driver on the outside. And I don't know if this stands to benefit or hurt either the 94 or the 9, but they are going to be in kind of reverse order than when they would have lined up if Miller had stayed out. So it is just Brian Chambliss and Andrew Freenosh on 28-lap-old tires. Everybody else with 4 fresh ones as we get set for green-white checkered attempt number 1 in the round of 12 opener from Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Chambliss was a half a straight away from a first career win. Now he's got to make the old tires work. Green flag flies. We're back underway. 2 laps to go.
And there's the outside, just not getting a good launch again. It's been a constant theme, and everybody now trying to freight train Freenosh. Now Phillip is the first driver through, though. He's got a good shot to take the lead here.
Got a real good look. He's on Chambliss. Chambliss going to protect the inside. It's Phillip to the outside and a caution. Thomas George. He spins into the inside wall, and we will slow them down at 129 after a wreck in turn 2.
And I think the trigger is Dylan Jones. He tried to push Freenosh forward. The thing is, he weeble-wobbled up the track, and this caused everything you see here. As soon as he pushed up, right into the doors of the 24 to the 9, collected everyone else, including Joseph Tice. Again, That is an on-playoff driver trying to help a playoff driver, and in turn, collecting a couple of playoff drivers as a result.
Yeah, look who spins. It's Davis into the inside wall, along with George, along with Tice, and Dylan Jones, who starts the contact, drives away. So the non-playoff cars, again, continue to be a factor. And what a way for this to shake out. You know, Dylan Jones, I mentioned, Justin, is a playoff driver in the number 11 machine, but, you know, in a four-wide situation with some non-playoff cars, trying to help Ferdinand out, doing his part. And, you know, you had McClendon right there as well. Benefield somehow sneaking through on the bottom. He was, you know, an inch away from getting wrecked. So was Lariah. Look at Steve Durham. Look out. Cars bouncing back up. I mean, that's a huge mess. We will extend now for a second attempt at overtime. Brian Chambliss, yes, still your race leader, but he was about to get absolutely mowed down in turn 3. I think that run showed us he's got very little hope of closing this.
Yeah, he is likely losing this lead down the back straight away. The question is who takes it now, because if that instant doesn't happen, I think Philip wins this race. Because he was the quickest through, and usually everybody else has about an extra couple seconds, even a couple laps, to get through some of the traffic like we've seen at tracks like Richmond. Now, there's the option of maybe McClendon taking it 3 on the bottom, right against the white line coming down to turn 2 if he can make it fit. Someone like Jones making it down that line. Lariah making that line work. Or Benefield trying to take advantage if things get chaotic there. In other words, now there's several options the drivers behind these cars can have. Before, there was just the one option.
Well, Dylan Jones will claim responsibility for the incident. That means that he will go all the way to the end of the line for the restart. Of course, the benefit of claiming responsibility for the incident is that you do not receive 2 penalty points. You will only receive 1. That is a totally separate tally aside from championship points. If a driver gets 7 penalty points at any given point in the year, he will be parked for 1 week, and you really don't want that as a playoff competitor, so he's got to go all the way to the rear and give up a top 5 spot to likely drop back to the low 20s, and the points that you're throwing out the window. Remember earlier in this race, Justin, when we said that Las Vegas was going to be the only maybe sane race of this round, and honestly, up until about lap number 120 or 133 and a half, I think it was. But it has really got off the rails, and this is a totally different race, a totally different championship picture since that moment.
Didn't we also mention that was the exact case on Tuesday, too, where first half of the race, nice and calm. Second half, well, you have your second example of that. Absolute calamity.
So we see now if the lights will go out on the pace car this time by, and how they line up. Chambliss has, by the way, lane control. He gets to choose which lane, but he looks like he will hold strong on the bottom. So that'll put Agnew Phillip alongside him. Got McClendon, I think, Justin, to your point, with a bit of second life in this, because it was Phillip's race to lose there. Typically, the car on the outside of the leader doesn't get as good of a restart as the car behind the leader. So if McClendon can get a good jump, follow the 25 through, maybe get alongside the 94, and be the first car to get back to Chambliss, or maybe he goes to the inside, if Phillip goes to the outside, McClendon still may have hope here to get the job done after he was one of the drivers 30 laps ago who had a real good look.
And because of the claimed caution from Jones, that moves Benefield as well to the bottom side, so even he might be able to try and force something, and it's something where if you have enough confidence, you try and make it work. You also have to have no fear that you're going to collect the entire field in the process. So if you have that balance like Benefield can have at times, he may have a shot here. I think he's actually trying to judge here, okay, how much space is there really here on this straightaway? I believe he can fit up to 4 wide on this track, like what happened in real life just this weekend at some points.
Well, we have seen a lot of unexpected twists and turns late in this race, and we will see what it has in store for us maybe just one more time. It will be attempt number 2 at a green-white checkered finish. Remember, Chambliss and Friedage, race control car, and Friedage heading outside of row 2 on 30-lap old tires compared to everybody else. Look for Phillip, the blue and white number 94, and McClendon, the yellow and white number 22, to try to win this race. Green flag flies, 2 laps to go. Chambliss gets a good jump, but here's the battle for second. McClendon to the inside of Phillip as they both try to reel in the 25.
And this is going to be key to try and get right underneath. If you're McClendon, and Chambliss hugging that white line, going to make him have to go the long way.
To McClendon to the outside. He was able to clear Phillip. So Agudo, Phillip battling with Adam Benefield for third and fourth behind. Here comes Benefield now. He'll give a shove to McClendon. Slides up. Phillip a crossover. It's McClendon at the white flag.
Is this enough of a cushion, though, especially with what we just seen from Benefield? He may try that again here if he can get clear enough as they're 3 wide in the pack.
It doesn't hold, though, for Chambliss. He's got to check up. Benefield's going to go to second. He needs a car length to chase down Scott McClendon. Final time in turn 4. Scott McClendon, a winner in the RealSimRacing Cup Series. It comes at Vegas as they wreck behind him.
What a finish. And I think Brian Chambliss is punching his steering wheel if I was him, because if that doesn't happen, what happened in 3 and 4, it's his race to lose with that big of a cushion. Instead, we have one of the more wild finishes.
He is letting it know that he is not happy right now.
And I don't blame him. But for Scott McClendon, he had a shot if that caution flag with Eberhardt didn't happen. He was in a great position there. He ends up taking the Go 22 to the front.
What a year for Scott McClendon. Had so many good runs. Wasn't able to find victory lane, wasn't able to get into the championship, but it took to career start number 54 in the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series powered by Boosted. For him to get the job done, you are looking at a first-time Full Throttle Cup winner, and he plays a big spoiler to Benefield, to Chambliss, and others by getting the win tonight in the Boosted.Club 125. Let's take a look at your full race results tonight for the virtual Las Vegas Motor Speedway as McClendon's celebration is ongoing. He gets the win, which means that no playoff drivers lock themselves in to the round of 8. Your playoff drivers: Benefield second, Washington fourth, Lariah fifth. The notable driver, Brian Chambliss, who's going to get a lot of points out of this race. But if he does not advance to the round of 8 on points, he will look back to this race and to that incident with Sexton and McBride as to why it's a P6 for Renage, P10 with damage.
Just outside that top 10, Dylan Jones, who claimed the caution, still got himself up there right behind Freenage. With Eric Stanford coming home in the 12th position, Trudell, Cato, Winfield, Mara, Davis Durham, along with Cruz and Rodden, rounded out your top 20 tonight. All those cars in the lead lap separated by 19 seconds. Some of them were involved in several crashes down the back of the white flag.
Yeah, a lot of spins, white flag. You also talk damage with the likes of George and Nieto, 21st and 22nd. They were the last cars to finish on the lead lap. The notables there on back: Daniel Eberhardt finishing in 28th position. And also involved in a late race incident on the next slide would be Joseph Tice finishing in 31st, the lowest finishing of the playoff drivers here from Vegas. We'll take a quick opportunity to step aside. When we come back, there is a lot to unpack where Scott McClendon's a race winner from Las Vegas Motor Speedway. You're watching RaceSpot's coverage of the 2020 Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series powered by Boosted on the iRacing Esports Network.
The field is rolling on the back straightaway.
Get ready. This is going to be tight. Out of turn 4, ladies and gentlemen. The All-American 400 is underway.
careful. The bumps here can get you every time. Entering the corner, exiting the corner.
And back live for the virtual Las Vegas Motor Speedway, where RaceSpot TV's coverage of the 2020 Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series is powered by Boosted, the place where gamers and creators go to monetize digitally. Their team will build you a totally free e-commerce store and help get sponsorships for those looking to build their brand online. Boosted is the #1 sponsorship platform for esports influencers. Join their team and visit boosted.club for more information. We're back live from Las Vegas, Nevada. Scott McLennan, your race winner tonight in the Boosted.Club 125, as we welcome you back into the RaceSpot TV booth. Evan Pasoko alongside with Justin Prince. And what a final 20 minutes or so of this race. Things really flipped on their head. That leads to Scott McLennan, Justin, getting his first career win.
Yeah, and he is someone that I think has been hungry for this victory, not just because of it being his first, but because he's come close several times. Last year specifically, he had several top 5 runs, had the fastest car in a couple cases, but the luck didn't just go his way. This year, it's been an up and down campaign, where luck has not been smiling on his side whatsoever, it seems, Evan, until tonight. Finally, breaking through. This is something I think a few drivers have been anticipating. I don't know if it's the exact way he expected it, but it's still the first win regardless in his career in RSR.
Takes advantage of the misfortunes of others. In this case, it's Brian Chambliss, and it's notable in the way that it happens, but at any given race, normally, unless you're Andrew Freenage from, last year and you're beating guys by 10 seconds, you're taking advantage of other people's missteps. You're putting yourself in the right position to get the win, and that's exactly what Scott McLennan did here this evening. And I guess he's still celebrating, Justin. We don't have him on heads yet, so instead, let's do this backwards order. We'll go over to you, and let's start things off with Kyle Kamer tonight, who comes home in third.
Yeah, Kyle Kamer and all the craziness coming away in the third position, all that, and it was an up and down race. He was among the drivers attempting a 2-stop strategy in this race, Evan. He now joins me in the broadcast booth. Kyle, first things first. Crazy finish to this one. How are you feeling about the third place run?
Pretty good, actually. It's pretty wild to go from that 2-stop strategy, getting caught a lap down, and then having all that chaos at the end and being able to find a way through it. I think I missed 2 wrecks there at the end.
Yeah, indeed, and it was a day to crazy run towards the checker flag. As well, you're one of the drivers attempting the rare strategy tonight because of some of the early caution flags. A 2-stop strategy under green. Essentially, what made you decide, okay, I don't know if I can make it on the field, I'm just going to try the 2-stop and hope that I can make up the time with fresh tires?
Yeah, I hadn't done any races or any practicing or anything this week, so I wasn't smart enough to know that if you short pitted like that, you were just going to get run over by the fresh tires a few laps later. So I thought I had some intelligent stuff going on, and quickly got taught a lesson that was a dumb strategy. And then basically, after that first pit stop, it stayed green, and I was stuck in that, so I had to come down early again. But yeah, that was just not knowing any better.
Still, though, a good points haul tonight. Still 2 more races to go in the round, but they're not easy ones. Super Speedway racing at Talladega. Road course racing at the Roval. Your thoughts first of all on Talladega, the next race.
Yeah, I mean they're both going to be wild card races, right? Anybody can just about win Talladega. You never know what's going to happen there. And then the Roval, I always love going to the road courses, no matter if it's the Roval or Watkins Glen or Sonoma or the Daytona road course this year. I've always been pretty strong on those road courses, so I look forward to that one.
Going to be an interesting next couple races, but who would you like to thank for your top 3 run tonight?
Yeah, I thank all the guys out on my team for helping me try to get better every single week. I was hoping to make the round of 12 and missed it by 2 points. But still continue to learn and try to get better every week. And thanks to those guys for always helping me. My wife for letting me take the time to be out here doing all this silliness with everybody every week. It's a lot of fun. And Evan, Justin, Hugo, for you guys putting this show on every week. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for the time. It's Kyle Kamer coming away with a top 3 run in the Box Crush Racing Machine. Now, second place went to one driver who had a very competitive race tonight. Led laps, was among the drivers who was on the 2-stopper after being tight on the fuel. Adam Benefield now joins us in the broadcast booth. Adam, intriguing race tonight. How are you feeling about the second place, just 1 spot short from the checker flag tonight in that 83?
Man, to tell you the honest truth, I was sitting here thinking, waiting for my interview, and I was thinking about last night's race, and I was like, man, my night went almost exactly like Denny Hamlin's went last night. Led a lot of laps, was a very fast car, got trapped a lap down because of a pit cycle, and somehow came back to finish second. No, man, the WR1 Chevy, it was pretty good. I think it was going to come down to between me, Daniel, or Andrew if it ran out right, but we were good. We just we stayed out to stretch it as long as I could, and I pitted, and I got back going on after the green flag pit stops. Got back out there going, and I realized I was going to be 2 laps short, so I had to make a second pit stop, and it just got busted with that caution. Didn't realize it involved Daniel and Andrew, so we just prayed for a caution, got it. It's not the way I wanted it to be, taking out that many cars by someone overreacting like that. But we got back on the lead lap and was able to come home second.
Let's focus towards the future now, because another decent points haul tonight with the strong finish. Some of your championship competitors tried some different risks, like Freenosh staying out, still finished top 10, for example. In our words, it's going to be tight for Talladega. How do you feel about that track? A track which Steel Horse Racing, the team you work with in this series, has been competitive at, and competitive in those types of races, I should say, in the past.
It's a wild card, man, and I think if we keep our game plan like we done, this season at the super speedways, it should be fine. We'll just have to sit back and wait and see. I know that even on the Coke side, Conti, which is watching tonight, and I really appreciate him coming in. He shot me a text right after the race telling me good job. So we on his side, WR1, we haven't had very good luck on super speedways. So hopefully he can change that Tuesday night, and then we can change that next Monday night. So we'll just see how it goes, and just ride it out. Luckily tonight we had the best run out of all the chasers, so that helped us. Was off to a good start on that, and we'll just see where it goes. And I will say this: I don't know if Evan mentioned it, but Conti qualified on the pole Tuesday night with a WR1 Chevrolet, and I did it again tonight, so that's pretty cool.
Yes, indeed it is. A strong qualifying run overall in that race. Real quickly, just curious on this, what do you think fans will expect to see from your technical alliance come tomorrow, just as a preview for what to expect for RSR and what to expect to see who makes the playoffs on that side too?
Man, those races are always crazy. They're wild. Luckily for us, with Michael Conti, I think we're sitting pretty solid. I know that one of our guys that's affiliated with us, Clamp, I think he's right there on the bubble. But I think it's going to be wild. I think it's going to be good, and I think that if everything goes right, you'll see our cars up front and doing good, and hopefully we can get a Clamp into the chase.
Kind of expecting the same type of race come next week for this series too. Real quick, anyone you want to thank for your run tonight?
Yeah, man. WR1 for letting me support them and them supporting me. They're awesome company. If you ever looking for any sim equipment, please go check them out. Facebook, Twitter. Chad Wheeler is making some unbelievable sim chassis over there, and they're really cool. Steel Horse Racing for letting me come over here and do this. My guys at Team Conti for letting me come over here and hang out with these guys on Monday nights, and Roll Speed Dynamics, KR Designs, and Lassiter Farms, and you guys for putting this on. This is awesome league, and I'm happy to be a part of it. Congratulations
on the run tonight.
Thanks, man.
Had a bit of field coming home second tonight was your pole sitter this evening, but the biggest storyline of them all, there was a chance to see a first-time winner with how we seen Shameless M. Clendon do tonight. In the end, everything smiled towards the way of the 22, Evan.
Yeah, allow me to introduce, as we go trackside and talk with your race winner tonight, RealSimRacing Cup Series winner, Scott McClendon, who gets the checkered flag tonight at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Scott, we'll talk about the race in a second, but first, congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's been a long time coming.
I know that this race took a turn in the 11th hour, a late race yellow, then another 2 attempts at an overtime restart. But honestly, I mean, it wasn't a total shock that you were there at the end, because before all of that, I mean, you looked like to be on the long runs, one of the best cars on track, and certainly, I think, had a thought all night long in your head that, hey, this could happen tonight. Kind of just walk us through this race.
Yeah, it was definitely crazy at the end, because I mean, I expected a green-white checkered after that caution, and it just kind of threw everything off. But my plan today was to literally just be patient, because I feel like that was my main issue in most of these races, being too aggressive at the wrong time. And it was kind of detrimental to my entire season, essentially. I've been fast, been on pace, but I haven't really made it toward the end. So that was the plan, was to be patient, be at the end. I saw that Daniel Eberhardt and Andrew and Thomas, they were up there, and I was just kind of sitting behind them in that little train that we were having. And it was just sit behind, save tires if I can, put heat cycles into all of the tires evenly, and it kind of worked out in terms of the long run pace. So it really worked out tonight, and I'm really glad that it did.
Was this a performance tonight, having been one of those best cars all night long, that surprised you at all, kind of when we got into the flow of things? Or did you kind of feel like this was coming either just because you felt good at Vegas, or, you know, kind of looking back to some of the other points this season where you've had really good runs, just haven't gotten the results that I think that speed was worthy of?
I think it's really a combination of both, because I believe myself to be a very fast competitive driver. I've raced with professional drivers in the peak antifreeze series countless of times and kept up with their pace. But I think combined with Vegas, which I love mile and a halves in general, it was really suited. It really suited my ability to drive because you had to like lay back, but then the tires kind of would die after about 20 or so laps, and the draft, the dirty air, would just make that even worse. So if you could back up the corner and just, you know, get your front nose a little bit of air wherever you can, that kind of really helped the car turn. And that's what I was doing the entire time. I would literally be on the top side and then just ride that middle if there was a hole there, just to get as much air on the front to kind of ease the tires, because the tires was the most important thing. I mean, I know you can flat it out, but it's very bad if we go on a long run like we did tonight.
Normally, when somebody gets the race win, we ask, you know, well, what's the next step? And oftentimes, you know, as you searched for this first win, it was, you know, what's it going to take to get it the next time through, and so on and so forth. Now that you've done it in attempt number 54 and kind of looking back on the huge strides that you've made in this series, what is the next step? Is it just to go out and get win number 2? Is it to, you know, on a full-time basis next year to make that step to be a playoff driver? I mean, a lot of drivers tend to say when they kind of get that monkey off their back and they get the first win that it kind of opens up and you get a lot of confidence. And, you know, giving a fast driver confidence is bad news for everybody else. I mean, you know, where do you go from this trip to victory lane?
Definitely plan on being in the playoffs next year. And then obviously winning again would be really awesome. And I feel like the next track is going to be a wild card on that front. But I feel obviously confident. But I feel like I'm going to do really well, especially with this monkey off my shoulder. And great racing with all the guys up there. Who was up there with me, and we were just patient, and that's what I want this league to do. It's just like, I love green flag runs because you can save, you can be aggressive towards the later end of the run, and it's driver against driver instead of yellow against driver. So the plan is simple: win as much as I can. I know I'm not in the playoffs, but if I can be the spoiler of everything because I'm doing an Andrew Freenar's of 2019, then I will definitely do that. But I think that's probably the basic plan for now anyway.
Well, we look forward to seeing what that next step is, Scott. And I say it every time we talk to somebody here on a Monday night, but I greatly appreciate you racing with us in RealSimRacing. Congratulations on the win, and hopefully we have an opportunity to chat with you in victory lane again soon.
Thank you very much.
The race winner tonight, first career win in the RealSimRacing Cup Series. It comes tonight for Scott McClendon in the Boosted Club 125. So we bring things back around, Justin, and kind of try to recap what has been a wild night. Again, didn't really start that crazy, but as things devolved, it changed up. And I'm looking at our championship standings leaving tonight. Big losses for Daniel Eberhardt, Thomas George, involved in incidents, and they drop way back. Of course, no playoff winner moving on, so nobody's locked in. But Adam Benefield, Michael Araya, David Washington, the names at the top. The drivers out right now: Grant Davis by 4. Kyle Trudell is the bubble driver 8th. You've got Davis -4, George -7, Eberhardt -11, and Joseph Tice's late race wreck puts him at -18. Now, a lot can change at Talladega, but that's certainly not a racetrack that I'd feel comfortable with the lead or not, but certainly having some points as a cushion would be beneficial, and there's a lot of big names there who have got to hope that they survive that just to get to the Roval, try to put the speed down to the pavement and keep moving on. It's going to be very difficult.
I don't think anyone's safe, honestly, after what we've seen tonight, and I'm expecting absolute calamity at Talladega, not just because, well, it's Talladega, but because we've seen it almost in the Coke Series too, where they knew the urgency was much more higher for, say, the second race at Daytona, expecting that same urgency being shown tomorrow as well. When drivers know they need to make X amount of points, they're going to make aggressive moves to get said points. and be more hungry for that, compared to just, say, the start of the season where you can just lay back. You know you have plenty more races to try and get victories. You have plenty more races to add on the points. In other words, we may see some moves we normally don't see some drivers to make, and some others elect to, say, even make it 3-4 wide if they have to fight for position. In other words, this may be one of the most hectic races yet for the Super Speedway race in RSR competition history coming up.
Yeah, we thought it was crazy when we raced at Daytona for the regular season finale, and now we're going to do it basically all over again. It's not the end of a round, but it's big. You know, Joseph Tice is in a bad spot, but at 18 points back, he's not going to be somebody who's going to be, you know, playing it safe. He's going to go for it, try to get the race win, try to get points. You may have some drivers, 5 points-ish up on the cut line, try to play it safe. Sometimes you can overthink a race like Talladega too. We could talk about the big one. We could talk about the Calamity, and it could just not happen. It probably will, but it could not happen, right? So you don't want to overthink things either. It's going to be awfully difficult to tell yourself, treat it like a normal race, because it isn't. But personally, I think that's the only way you can do it without psyching yourself out too much, at least.
That's where having the friends can come in and plan out the strategy too, you have to think, Evan, but at the same time, some of them may tailor that strategy to, okay, we need to get you some lead laps for some points, let's get you towards the front to start and then drop back, for example. Or we may see teams elect to say, you know what, let's stay at the back, wait for them to go absolutely crazy, and then hope that the trouble happens and then they can start pushing the final run once they know they're good on fuel. Here's the concern though, not everybody can be at the back of the field, as we both know. Eventually, the back of the field eventually has someone be the front of it. So in other words, there's going to be a boom rush towards the front eventually in that race. It's not going to be as simple as...
You're not going to want to miss it. That's as basic as it. I mean, you don't want to miss it.
Exactly. In other words, it's going to be crazy.
And of course, we've seen guys try to stay back, stay out of trouble. There's no yellow. They finish 30 seconds off. You screw yourself. And don't forget, again, it's not just those 12 playoff drivers. We talked all night about the non-playoff drivers having implications. They certainly did this evening. They're all going into Talladega thinking, this is my best shot left on the season to get a win in this series. So they're going to be a little bit more, you know, throwing caution to the wind per se. And it's going to make it awfully difficult for those drivers in the postseason to try to be smart, to try to finesse this race and try to survive a trip to Talladega for the final super speedway race of the year. But as we get set for that one next time out, that is it for us here tonight from Las Vegas, as the opening race of the round of 16 falls into, around the 12 now, I should say, falls into our rearview mirror. That's it for round number 24 on the season. So as always, we're happy that you tuned in with us to the Race Spot TV. For our producer downstairs, Hugo Luis, for Justin Prince and myself, Evan Pasoko, I want to thank you for tuning in and join us in congratulating Scott McClendon, a first-time career winner in RealSimRacing Full Throttle Cup Series competition. So we are back in 1 week's time for our trip to Talladega. That is going to be Monday, October the 5th. It is a 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time start. As always, that race and every race of the 2020 Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series powered by Boosted can be found right here on Race Spot TV and the iRacing Esports Network. Until next time, good night from Las Vegas, where Scott McClendon walks away with the jackpot.